Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, presented by Cattle, Season 5, Episode number 37. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Our very special guest on this episode, recorded live in Niagara Falls at the Ontario Craft Wineries Conference, is Dan Sullivan, co-founder with his wife Lynn, and head winemaker, vineyard manager at Rose Hall Run. 35 years of experience as an Ontario winemaker, recognized as one of the top winemakers and grape growers in the region, one of three in Ontario. So you've got the Lake Erie area, you've got Niagara, and you've got Peck, which, Prince Edward County. Remember, Sylvain, I'm from Ottawa, and you spent some time at RMC. I remember Prince Edward County was just kind of a place you drove by to get to Toronto back when we were at university. But now it is just a thriving region.
Or to go to Sandbanks, or it's in that area. Nobody thought about Prince Edward County as a good place to go eat. It was a good place to go and play volleyball.
Well, and what a wine region. Dan is a 150-acre farm. It's really close to Lake Ontario. Yeah. Great, remarkable clay, and they've done amazing stuff. And he's winning awards as his Pinots and Chardonnays. 25 acres of Vinfiera. He's got Pinot, Sauvignon Blanc. Anyway, I met Dan. What an impressive guy. It's a family-run business, basically. And I had not actually had his wine. And there were some on offer. I had not had his wine. Wow. I had a bunch of other wines.
He didn't bring wine with him at the event?
He did at the event. I had not, until that event, had not tried his wine. And oh my God, it was amazing. So it is, not only is he a great winemaker, well, I guess he's a great winemaker because it's really good wine. So we'll get to know him a little bit better now.
Yes.
For those on YouTube and maybe they can hear a little different. Where are you and what are you doing?
Oh, can you actually hear the noise?
No, I could just hear that you're on a different mic. You're on your headset versus on your.
It's my traveling mic. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm in Vancouver this week. I'm at the BC Food and Beverage Thrive Conference, an amazing conference. It's incredibly well organized, and of course, I got my bag of goodies. I just feel like I just feel like I just went trick or treating, but
adult trick or treating, going to conferences.
Yeah. So, anyways, I was. There were two keynotes to start the day. I was number 2. The first one was a motivational speaker looking at values. And I went on stage, and you know me, I never know what I'm going to say, and I reflected on some of the things that the first speaker mentioned, and then got into some of the policy stuff. The Minister of Ag was there, and of course, as you know me, I'm honest when I speak, and I did criticize some of the policies that are in BC. For example, the ALR, which really prevents manufacturers to actually go beyond farmers that are at proximity to the plant to procure food, which really limits anyone's capacity to manufacture anything, really. And so it's been a problem in the province, and I've actually raised the issue many, many times over the years. And I thought it was a good place for me to basically tell the minister, I think it's time to address this issue, because the 500 people in the room agreed with me. So anyways, so it was fun. Actually, it was really great, and just had lunch with some entrepreneurs, and then I'll be back later.
And you were saying off mic that former or a prior guest of ours is joining you at the conference. Who is that?
Yeah, Nicholas Mulroney from Bond Bakery. Absolutely. So he actually has a couple of plants right here in BC, and that's why he comes here quite a lot. So he's going to be on stage, of course, telling his story. Yesterday, I actually visited a couple of plants, and probably one of them I'll want them on our show. Daily Pizzas. They actually make 3,600 pizzas an hour.
An hour?
An hour. Yeah.
Wow. Are you talking frozen pizzas or what?
Yeah, frozen pizzas, frozen vegan pizzas. But of course, we went into their test kitchen and testing like mac and cheese and melting cheese. And I gotta tell you, the melting cheese just behaved like real cheese. You couldn't make the difference.
So this was plant-based cheese.
It's all plant-based, non-dairy, zero dairy. It was incredible, and they did a really good job. So we toured with them. I was with Katrina Farrell, who we've had her on our show. I think it was last year. The executive director of the Food and Beverage Canada. So her and I actually visited a couple of companies yesterday afternoon.
Great.
And it was really good. The other company was Cultured Lab. They actually empower other companies to develop new plant-based products as well.
Interesting. Well, you're never you don't just go there to be a tourist. You're in any town you're visiting. It's fantastic. And our note to our listeners, our season's kind of coming to a wrap. I mean, we're going to wrap season 5 up in a couple of episodes, and then we do what we did last year, which was very popular. We've got a bunch of recordings that we made with fascinating, interesting, great entrepreneurs at Seattle, Canada, and those episodes will play all summer while you gallivant across North America and head to places.
Well, my conference season is coming to a close soon. I think I have a couple of gigs and then I'm done. And of course, next week I'll be in Texas A&M for some duties for some meetings, and I'm back for a couple of trips, and then we're going to start looking at moving over to Texas at some point.
Yippee-ki-yay. Just get there and miss the hurricane season. That's the key.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. All right, let's get in the news. Plenty of it. Let's start with this. Let's start with inflation numbers. From bad to worse in terms of food inflation, numbers just released. Overall inflation down thanks to lower gas, probably elimination of the carbon tax. But I guess we should triangulate this with what we've been looking at, with a couple of hot items being very much, the escalating price. We've got some countervailing tariffs, and what's coming together to create this soup of high food inflation.
Well, I mean, first of all, you have to look internationally and see what else is going on elsewhere. So you may actually be dealing with a black swan event, just like Ukraine, for example, a few years ago.
But everybody deals with it.
Everyone had to deal with food inflation. But right now, Canada is number one.
We're leading. Hey, we're number one. Oh, no, that's not a good thing.
We have the highest, I don't think should be celebrating, but we have the highest food inflation rate among G7 countries. Of course, Japan has not reported for April yet, but we're number one. And so that tells me that something is going on domestically. And I think really when you unpack some of the things that are happening with categories, produce, frozen, pantry stuff, that's all tariffs. I mean, there's of course there are the pivots, but also the counter tariffs actually played a huge role. And I think, honestly, that's probably why incognito, Prime Minister Carney on April 16 decided to put an end to some of these counter tariffs affecting the food industry, which was the right call, but nobody knew about it. Champagne made an announcement on the 16th, but during an election, nobody pays attention to ministers. They pay attention to the prime minister. And so he didn't say a word about it. He has not said any word about it. But on May 7th, most tariffs affecting the food industry, with the exception of perhaps orange juice, alcohol, and coffee, there are no tariffs anymore, which is, again, the good approach to take with the Americans. But because of the elbows up, because of Canada's not for sale, all the things that were happening, my guess is that Prime Minister Carney didn't want to alienate that base that really was looking for a prime minister that was strong and resist and confront Donald Trump. The reality is that we just basically got rid of a bunch of terrorists with no concessions.
Well, let's a couple of questions. So first of all, when we look at the food inflation as it exists today, your point is we're probably seeing the impact of countervailing tariffs on that across a range of goods. Is there also, I was wondering, an impact of Canadians choosing higher priced made in Canada foods, which of course we support, but contributing in such, what you described as substitution? If I'm going to substitute a Mexican or Peruvian blueberry versus California, you might pay more. Is there some of that in there as well?
I don't think any products have actually moved. The problem is it's the alternatives that have actually moved. If you're replacing an American product with something from, say, Peru, it will cost you more to get that product into your store. And
that's exactly what I'm saying, though. That's what I'm saying. Like,
that's
some of the
kind of what
inflation
Loblaw is. That's why I think Loblaw came out last week, basically saying, "Listen, there's going to be a lot of different products exposed to this nonsense, and so we better actually alert the Canadian public, even though we now know that there are few tariffs impacting the food industry." So it may feel like a paradox, but at the end of the day, I think companies like Loblaw is just tired of dealing with this geopolitical nonsense. Same with Walmart in the U.S., by the way. The difference between Loblaws and Walmart is that, if I use President Trump's words, well, Walmart can eat tariffs up, not Loblaws. It cannot. It cannot. So because, well, first of all, Walmart is not just a grocer. It sells a whole lot of other stuff with higher margins. But two, the issue with the Canadian economy is that it's not going as well as in the U.S. In the U.S., food inflation is dropping. It's dropping, not increasing, while ours is increasing. So you can tell within 2 months, tariffs are really awful ideas for the Canadian industry, for the Canadian economy, but for the American economy, they can absorb the shock.
And when you say tariffs from our context, it's countervailing tariffs, just to be clear for the listener and for me, because you've always said there's a bunch of ways to fight the American intrusions into our economy, punishing our own consumers on a broad base.
And I never understood that. I mean, I remember you and I spoke about this in December. And when Trump started to talk about tariffs, he wasn't even sworn in yet. And I felt, no, he's not going to tariff food. That's impossible. And of course, Canada is not stupid enough to actually implement countervailing tariffs on food coming into to Canada. But I guess I misread some of the stuff that were going on in people's brains in Ottawa.
Yeah, well,
but they're not the same brains. Like, in all honesty, I do think, and I want to underscore the fact that Prime Minister Carney made the right call here. It's really what's needed.
Right, and that's the right thing. So, in the fullness of time, just to wrap on this, we should see food inflation moderate if the countervailing tariffs were a driver, because there's few of them left. You would expect to see, if not next month, the month after, you would expect, if this thesis holds true, for food inflation to moderate a bit. Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And the economy will slow, and that means that people will have less money, and that's going to actually put less pressure on food prices. So there's lots of things going on, but I don't see how the 3.8% will remain at 3.8%, basically. And of course, our agriculturists will pick up the pace as well.
Right. And I was going to say, we're rolling into the summer, so the category of fresh starts to pick up, because we start to get into our Canadian.
The big problem is meat. Meat products are basically a problem, because all three main components, pork, chicken, and beef, especially beef, prices are still rising.
Let's move on. Let's talk about what's been started to be called maple washing. It's where people or retailers, whoever, are kind of, using what...
Did you see some of my posts in the last couple of days?
Well, it reminded me of a judge in the U.S. when they were challenging a marketing campaign, and they gave some forgiveness to the marketers, calling it marketing puffery. So the difference between deceitful behavior and just marketing puffery, we seem to be pretty close to that line in some of those occasions. Made in, or it passed through, or something like that. Are you seeing a lot of this? I know retailers are keeping an eye out for it, but maybe sometimes it gets carried away. I don't know what's going on.
Well, the thing about so first of all, every day I get pictures of people complaining. They say, "Sylvain, you need to say something about this. You need to say something about that." And most of them, I dismiss them because I don't know where these pictures were taken. Are they legit? But in the last couple of weeks, I actually have received a couple of cases that I actually, I know the people, I trust them, and looked into it. And a couple of cases were a bit annoying. So the one case, we had a huge maple leaf card right next to Canadian oranges. Yeah,
That's not something I thought we grew here in Canada.
that's right. Navel oranges. So it's for £3, $8. Okay, so of course the person I know went to management, said, "Listen, I think there's something wrong here." So they fix
in-store. Is that in-store execution issues? Because I see that as well, right? The wrong thing in the wrong place.
Yeah, but
signage,
I mean, but you want to be extremely careful these days. Here's where I think I have a real issue is that the next day he went back to the same store, and took a picture of the same shelf, only to realize that they did change to product of Egypt, navel oranges from Egypt. But it was $6.99 for £3 instead of $8 for £3. So it was 12.5% cheaper because there was no maple leaf.
Yeah, or it was mislabeled to begin with at the wrong price.
I don't know, but it doesn't look good. I mean, that's the bottom line, right? Because you clearly see that the maple leaf was actually meant to attract the attention of shoppers, and it was actually priced. It's the same product. I mean, why would you actually charge more for the same exact product? So maybe it was merchandising that went awry. Maybe it was some young clerk that just didn't look at the labeling properly. It can be a lot of different things, but I do think for grocers out there, just be careful, because right now people are watching, especially in light of the fact that inflation is really way up there.
All right, so your clarion call to the grocers listening is, measure twice, cut once, and keep a close eye on that.
Because people get upset very, very easily when they see some of these things, and they'll accuse. And I've always believed that grocers are not out there to gouge, they're not profiteering if you look at their statement. But at the same time, you don't want to give arguments to the crowd they can use against you.
All right. Next question. Why did the chicken plant cross the border? So Exceldor, which is a big chicken processing co-op in Quebec.
It is a big co-op. Yeah, absolutely.
To Ontario and an Ontario company. Talk about it, and why is it important? Why are we even talking?
Sofina is a huge company. It's a $6 billion company. They're always looking for good investments. And so it came out last week. There's an offer to purchase Exceldor, and Exceldor is a cooperative, a massive cooperative with, I think, 6-7 plants. And some of them are actually in Ontario, by the way. I think there are 2 of them in Ontario. And they went through a couple of strikes, I think. There were some labor disputes. Anyway, it's not necessarily making a whole lot of money, but Sofina is actually interested in buying it. Now, because it is supply management or supply managed, we're not looking at seeing this transfer of production into Ontario. But my guess is that chicken will start to become a little bit more expensive in the eastern part of the country, because the thing about supply management and Exceldor is that they work together, right? If there's a strike, a disruption, when things go well, things go well. When things go wrong, like COVID or a labor dispute, it becomes a problem. If you have a private company working with producers, you're going to see that disconnect in terms of how to deal with specific issues. And that could lead to, in my view, higher prices and some lingering, if there are issues that do pop up, I foresee, some disputes, some issues linger over time, because you'll see producers not having similar interests than Sofina, for example. So on June 5th, farmers in Quebec, the owners of the cooperative, will actually be voting on whether or not they should accept the offer or not.
And just for the listener, Sofina, you might not know the name Sofina, but you'd recognize certainly their brands: Lilydale, Jane's, Astro, Cuddy, some very
they're not
prominent
new to supply management. And I think, frankly, to be honest, if there is a buyer for Exceldor, Sofina would be it. But it will create a different dynamic in Quebec when it comes to the chicken industry.
Well, talk about a new dynamic with our new ag minister. So I heard some of his first words. He's made a statement. Of course, the first words seem to be out of his mouth, we're not touching supply management. So bending the knee, as you would say, to the forces of supply management. Or as George Orwell would say, all animals are created equal, but some are created more equal than others.
Absolutely.
What other things did you hear from the new minister? I think he announced some intention to do some good thing.
I mean, I don't know about you, but when I actually read his statement, it was all about farming.
Yeah.
And nothing else.
Yeah.
That's not good. Because the agri-food industry is not just about farming. It's about processing, distribution, retail, restaurants, everything else. And so I think he's going to be basically committed to farming. And that's not the kind of ag minister we want. We want a ag minister with a different scope on issues. And the supply management comment, I mean, it's expected. It's not going to be up to him to decide whether or not to save supply management. It's going to be up to global affairs. It's going to be up to the United States, Mexico, and beyond. It's not going to be up to him, really. And it's not going to be up to farmers either.
Let's end this section before we get to our interview. Let's end it appropriately. Talk about wine. So Ontario Premier Doug Ford put out his budget, and in it was a little gift for Ontario winemakers. I don't know if you saw this. Ontario government provides $35 million in support for eligible wineries over 5 years. Total funding $175 million. Expected double percentage of Ontario grapes in blended products. So that's a nice gift, I guess, for the wineries. Any thoughts on that?
No, I think it's great. I mean, I think you have a premier in Ontario that actually truly loves food. And he's committed to food, which is really nice. And I think that the winery industry in Ontario is a powerhouse and can actually do even better. And so those are the kinds of things. It's not a whole lot of money. It's only $35 million, but with that amount of money, you can actually make a huge difference. Yeah,
absolutely. At that scale, I mean, like Dan, not all, but many of the wineries are family-run businesses, or they're SMEs, small independent, small mid-size. There's some larger ones for sure, but it's a great step forward. So speaking of great step forward, let's get to our interview with Dan Sullivan, Rose Hall Wine, who's, I'm sure, happy about this announcement himself. Goes right to part of the core of his business. Of course, we recorded this interview before this announcement, but anyway, you'll get a great sense of Dan. But first, we're going to hear a few words from our presenting sponsor, Cattle. Does your digital customer engagement strategy need a serious upgrade? Enter Cattle, Canada's consumer insights powerhouse with the largest, most active panel of everyday shoppers. They're not your typical sponsor. They're the voice of the consumer, always in the know on the hottest trends and shaping what's next. So why Cattle? They go beyond consumer insights. They're trailblazing the future of ratings and reviews and leading the charge in user-generated content. With unmatched syndicated receipt data and the ability to gather reviews across any category, Cattle partners with giants like Walmart and Canadian Tire to deliver results that count. Visit askcattle.com now for an exclusive The Food Professor podcast listener discount on your first review or research campaign today. That's askcattle.com. Dan, welcome to the Food Professor podcast. How are you?
Thanks, Michael. How are you?
Well, it's great to be here in person with you, the Ontario Craft Wineries Conference in beautiful Niagara Falls. It's a beautiful day to have a conference.
Gorgeous out. This is the 7th annual. This is the nicest day I can recall having here. So, it's nice to be back. Nice to have the premier here today, too. So,
well, boy, I'm going to ask you about that later, but you've got such an advocate with Premier Ford as an industry, right? He's really does seem to be behind your industry and growing the industry and making changes. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that it's kind of been a continuum of change and development within the industry and with retail modernization and the different markets opening up to VQA Ontario wines. And so, I think the Premier Ford kind of took it to the next level and really accelerated a couple of really key things. was I hate calling them support programs. What they are is they are reductions in tax that is being taken at our level. So what they have done is they have increased the incentive for domestic producers to be able to deliver wines into their market profitably, and then also at the cellar door. So without getting too nerdy here, back in the day when they harmonized the GST and HST, the government didn't want to let the money from that harmonization go from the wine industry, so they implemented a supplementary 6.1% tax on us to kind of claw back some of that money, and the Ford government rescinded that. And aside from all the big players in the industry, the thing that was really great about that was that it reached every single, farm gate and farm door in the province. So it benefited everybody. And I think, when you're trying to set policy, is there a better policy that you can implement than something that helps everybody? So we were really grateful for that.
Was another milestone, I think, back to the COVID era and pluses and minuses of the COVID era. But I relished in the fact that I could order and have now wine delivered to my doorstep, which I did quite frequently during the COVID era. But it's funny when you think about it, like that was a big change in Ontario, right? The way you got your own wine, whether you wanted to participate in it or not, that was a big step forward, I think.
Yeah, it was. I think that on Canadians and Ontarians in particular, I think the way that we purchase beverage alcohol has been so deeply ingrained because of the monopoly that we've had in Ontario for the last 100 years that I think that change has come hard. And something successful when the main supply source for consumers is piling into the space as well. So with online sales, I think obviously in every crisis, I guess there can be an opportunity. So that particular opportunity was good for us. And I think that once consumers understood just how easy it was to get wine delivered to their home, it really took off. And so I think the big thing with consumers is that mental commitment to buy more than one bottle at a time because of its convenience just to go out to the store. So, of course, by and large, most of the wines that are being purchased by consumers are through those channels. But some of the really, really great wines, not only can you access them, but you can have them delivered right to your door. It's kind of a no-brainer.
Well, and it can develop such we're going to talk about it a little bit later. It develops such a community and fans for your product, right? I mean, Seth Godin talks about products that are remarkable, literally to be remarked upon, right? So buying one-offs on the shelf based on maybe a loyalty program incentive or whatever is one thing, but getting that wine and enjoying a case of it and enjoying that frequency, and that connection. I think there's an emotional connection with the winery.
That's a huge thing. So, whether you want to call them gorillas or evangelists, all of us small producers, really, really, those customers are super important to us. And, and because of that, you want to give them every advantage to not only buy and enjoy the products, but also to talk to their friends about them, right? And we were just talking, offline here a second ago about the power of social media. Yeah. And when we take a look at, it isn't the old school top-down, this critic scored it this or that or whatever. A lot of the younger consumers, it's about my friend had this wine, or, we had it together.
Or they did a TikTok about it, and that's how I choose it. I mean, it's really transformed the business. Anyway, we've gotten a little bit ahead of yourself. Who are you, and what do you do for a living? How'd you get into this business?
So I'm Dan Sullivan. I'm I'm the co-founder and OG farmer at Rosehall Run Vineyards in Prince Edward County, Ontario. Mm-hmm. So my partner Cam and I and our respective partners Lynn and Cindy, founded Rose Hall Run, and I planted the first vines. We're going into 25th leaf this year with the original vines.
I love that area. Like, I'm from Ottawa originally and moved to Toronto.
We're Ottawa's wine region.
You know, it's for many years it would just be a drive-by area, like when I was growing up, right? And now it's just such a renaissance of a region. Because I want to today at this, I'm going to try and talk to somebody from each particular region in Ontario, right? The Niagara, like the Erie, and the Peck. I'm kind of new to the Prince Edward County in the past 3 years. My wife and I love it. We go there and we enjoy their wines, and it's fantastic.
And so you hit on something really important and valuable there, and that's that. Things like the wine industry, they don't just speak to that specific product. What they're speaking to is a little bit lifestyle, a little bit that, not a finer things in life way that is, snobby or anything like that, but just that there are simple, neat pleasures that you can get locally here in Ontario that. And the great thing about the wine industry is each place is unique and distinctive. So the vibe that you're going to get in Prince Edward County is different. But it doesn't just go to the wine industry. It goes to the entire hospitality industry. Yeah. Prince Edward County, back when I got there in 2000, the fall of 2000, it was like Sandbanks Provincial Park, and then it was like roll up the sidewalk after Labor Day, and the kids are back at school. Now, we're a four-season destination. We've got incredibly fine restaurants. We've got a really, really strong artisans community, and we're all symbiotically linked to one another in that what we want to do is, show passionately the things that we grow and make the best, and deliver them to people in, a really enjoyable and in our case, I think truly authentic setting. So
tell me about your wines. Like what your philosophy, or what makes them different, or what's a big hit for you? What's a surprise for you? Have you got any surprise hits? Or talk about that for a bit.
So we started in Prince Edward County, and I started as originally as a wine lover, and then as an amateur winemaker, quite a serious one. But I think the great thing about Prince Edward County was kind of coming out of the box. We knew we weren't going to be all things to all people. So we're being on the North Shore of Lake Ontario, we're a little bit cooler climate than, say, for example, Niagara or Lake Erie North Shore. And so the focus was on Pinot Noir and Chardonnay at our farm, and predominantly most other people that started around when we did. And there were some outlying grapes and stuff like that. And, some of them have been okay, successful. But at our core, that's really what our industry is about.
Strength of the region and built up from there.
And so I think that by sort of imposing that focus or discipline on what the pursuit was going to be, I think it really helped our industry and continues to today. In that, what are we known for? Well, we're known for great Pinot, Chardonnay, and sparkling wine. And there's other good wines, like we make really good Pinot Gris. We happen to grow Sauvignon Blanc, and one of my weird outliers is I actually grow Tempranillo at my farm.
What's that? Explain what that is.
So it's a grape variety, and it's the most planted grape variety in Rioja, Spain.
So Rioja, okay.
So I
was in Spain last year. It tastes very different. Yeah, it's a very different tasting wine.
So it tastes nothing like Spanish wine because it's not from Spain.
Right.
So, but that's the great thing about it is even the Pinots that we're growing in Prince Edward County, there's a lot of parallels that casting your eye to Burgundy in the old world and stuff like that. I think what's really great is that what we're carving out is something that is uniquely and distinctly ours. And I will say not just here, and I'm sure that Niagara folks and Lake Erie North Shore folks will probably say it, but here in Ontario, what I think we're finally getting to is that the world is catching up to where we've been. You know what I mean? And
interesting.
And so I think that the kinds of wines that we're making now are the kinds of wines that consumers are now turning to. A little lower in alcohol, a little fresher. You don't always have to age them for 15 years.
I was going to say, you don't have to have a cellar.
Although I will say, I've been in the business long enough that, I'm opening up bottles of my 2007 and they're still drinking great. So, wines don't, I say, this is my line, we don't knock you out with a sucker punch. So we're not full of tannins and full of booze in our wines and stuff. We don't knock you out with a punch. We knock you out with a feather. And so, so the thing that is really great is, you know what? A lot of times, people are picking a wine, pick out a wine and say, oh, well, what can I make to go with this? Whereas what you can do is you can say, I think I'm going to have a chicken tonight. You know what? That Pinot Noir from Rose Hall is going to be fantastic with it. So is the Chardonnay, for that matter. And so what it allows for...
you got a choice, a variety.
And so I think that's really in keeping. People are busy these days. I think that a lot of people really do plan a lot of entertaining at home. So I think that we can cross over into both worlds and be a really enjoyable drink on a casual level, but also on a much more...
It's like an occasion level.
Yeah, and on an elevated level, as you say, that's an occasion. So
tell me a little bit more about your physical facility. So many wineries, in the early days, they were basically a farm that created and went to market, but now more and more, there's much more to it. Much more welcoming to visitors, or much more elaborate. What is your facility like, and how do you welcome visitors?
Right. So our original facility was the original place where I drove my tractor in one door and out the other. But it's evolved over the years. So that's now our main tasting room in our office. And so we host people at our tasting room. We just doubled the size of it in 2001 post-COVID. We were finding that we just needed to be more scalable. So we put a big addition on that, and then over across the parking lot from the way is our winery, state-of-the-art winery. We state-of-the-art in 2007. It hasn't changed a huge amount, but it's still there.
And how much production? How many bottles do you make? What's the rate?
In a given year, we'll produce anywhere between 9,000 and 14,000 cases. So that actually makes us the largest family-owned winery in Prince Edward County.
Oh, wow! Congratulations.
I think every winery and wine grower in Prince Edward County, the passion that they bring to whatever endeavor it is that they're doing is important.
Yeah.
And the statement that they're making, both with what they're growing and
how they present themselves, right?
Exactly, is great. So we're a pretty straightforward winery. I constantly wrestle about adding a food component to it, but to be honest, I don't have a huge amount of expertise in food. So if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. And we have had food trucks, so it may be something that we go into. But we also have a lot of great partners in the community. Our restaurant community and stuff like that. So there's piles of great food options for consumers.
Let's talk about how you go to market. So are you in the LCBO? Do you have a direct clubs? Do you what ways do you go to market to get your product to consumers?
Yeah. So I would say probably a little over half our wines go to the LCBO. There are 3 entry-level products, but they're extremely important to us because they're often the calling card that people get introduced to Rose Hall run-through. So we've been really grateful for the great relationship that we've had with LCBO over the years, and the receptiveness of consumers, particularly locally. We're extremely strong in Eastern Ontario to our wines. And so the balance of it is mostly our estate-grown stuff. I have a small vineyard that I basically lease down here that I work with a local grower. And my friend Bob Nadelko, he grows the things that I can't grow. So he's got a nice plot of Cab Sauv on his property, grows Riesling, which I don't grow, and we make some great wines out of those. But again, on a very focused and sort of individualist level with those products. Yeah.
Now, do you ship internationally? Do you have an international business? Is that an opportunity for folks like yourself?
So we're just trying to get over the whole interprovincial thing right now. So I know that you want to get there. So and so I think we're kind of at a critical mass point where we can start looking at that. And I actually think that the way that we should be approaching that is very top down. So leading with our best wines, which are state grown products, and so for those, it's a bit daunting because it's not unnecessarily if you build it they will will come proposition. And we're finite. We've got about 26 acres of vines at our property, and so what we make. But obviously, what we like is all the vines are old enough and are producing quality at a high enough level that I think that we can offer them as premium wines to people. But the big thing is the market catching up with it, to be honest. So even our entry level wines are getting some awfully classy hand me downs. And so
How do you get? Let's talk. We were talking off mic, you and I, as we were walking here, about marketing, with the new world of marketing, and as you said, Jake Carls is here as a keynote. Midday Squares. They basically built that entire business from energy, enthusiasm, but a lot of social media marketing. Is in the time you've been doing this, how much more important is social media and building a community to wine growers in Ontario?
I think that where social media has become more important, although it's a very, for lack of a better term, as a curated kind of experience in many ways now. There's also very much an organic feel to it, and so the whole notion of going viral and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's very extremely important. Like we alluded to, a lot of the cues of young purchasers are coming from those sources. So the traditional types of sales, marketing, and advertising are fundamentally shifted away from the way it used to be done. And I also think that when you're a small producer too, within that whole ecosystem or sphere of influence and influencers, there are niche markets, right? And so if anything, I think what we've really found, not just with this, but I'm a big music fan too, is that what you have is a very, very big collection of small communities that are hyper-focused on what they're doing. And I think, for example, with things like natural wines and stuff like that, I think that there was a very passionate and small group of devotees that were there, and they were able to, really grow a category.
And they were able to find each other, right? So
exactly.
They were able to find each other and then, find the right products.
And of course,
sharing.
The demographic and all the rest of it was there to support it. And so I would say that, we're sort of in almost like the what I would call like the post-punk era of social media, right? So people know how to play their instruments now,
right.
And they know how to get a message out, and of course, it's been monetized a lot more than before, and that none of that is a bad thing.
I often put that and other things in a context of table stakes versus differentiators,
right?
And as a business, table stakes keeps moving, right? At one point, all you had to do was X, but now everybody does X. So and you were different at one point, whatever it was, maybe you were buying Google ads. Now everybody's buying Google ads. It's table stakes. And then you got to focus on what are those differentiators. It sounds like one you're thinking about is find those niche communities that correlate to the products that you make and that you guys are great at.
And so it's about finding your people, your
tribe,
the evangelists, and the hand-to-hand combat people that are passionate about the same things that you are in the business that you're in, and in our case, it's wine, and it's not always easy, and it's something that you can never drop the ball on, right? And so there's a lot of competing attentions for consumers in that space, and so I think I get a little concerned in that in the constant quest for something new, that sometimes the things that make something really, really great get kind of fall by the wayside. And I think when you're dealing with something like agriculture the way that we are, the big thing is the anchor to the place. And so I say to my winemaker all the time, if we're doing our jobs right, people will forget Dan Sullivan or Lee Baker, my winemaker, but what they'll remember is they'll remember the place. They'll remember Rose Hall Run. So the notion of like the rock star winemaker, which really kind of plays into the social media thing, is kind of a cool thing, but it lives and dies with whoever that creator or message carrier is. And really what you want to do, if you're underpinning something to alcohol or to winemaking or to agriculture, is that what you want to do is you want to show people that there's a consistency and a sustainability and a value to the actual place. And I think that the build out from that is that if you're doing that as a community, then what you have is you have all the other things that are surrounding it that thrive and prosper alongside it. And to me, that's how you build really, really strong, resilient communities, by doing something that no one else can do, right? And nobody else can make Prince Edward County wine. Only Prince Edward County can do that. And so it's and so whatever the iteration is of people, but for me, it's about coming back to what it is that we have in the ground, right? That may evolve and change over time with climate change and everything else, and maybe even consumer perceptions of what they value in products. But at this point in time, I know that we're playing, in the A-League in that in that pursuit. So don't change it. But appreciate it. And so what it is about trying to get that message out. And so it's really important. So hopefully you'll help us do that.
Yeah, well, we're happy to share the word. Last question for you. Headwinds and tailwinds. So we're at a really interesting time in the economy and in trade, and you've got a situation where you've got an entire country's product removed from shelves for sale. So there's a bit of a tailwind, and there's other tailwinds and headwinds. Maybe we're at some kind of cusp of tackling interprovincial trade. How are you feeling? What's your general sense of optimism, and what are the big things that you're focused on and hope that happen in the near term?
I see a lot of potentially great things coming out of this. I think that we're kind of on a bit of a roll in the from the mid-aughts to 2015 or so with the Go Local movement and stuff like that. And then I think it kind of, to be honest, not cratered, but slowed a little bit.
Sure.
And I think that now what it is that little tap on the shoulder to consumers that what happens at home is important. And so if anything, I'm hoping that there'll be some residual. It's
like momentum, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I often say the hardest thing, I don't know if you share this, the hardest thing is to create or capture momentum in a business, right? Or in an industry, right? And feels to me like the Ontario wine VQA has
certainly
got a momentum. Some of it just you earned because of some guy down in the States. Right. Other thing you built and worked hard,
Yeah, but the thing is, like we can have the opportunity presented to us, but we have to be able to deliver, right?
Yeah.
And so that's I think where we are really, our rubber is meeting the road on that. We can do it, and the wines that we're making can stand shoulder to shoulder with the best. And so really I think what it comes down to is just giving people having the opportunity to do it and to make that little $18 leap of faith, if that's what it is. And so the thing is, I do sort of see that, obviously I think that there's some economic headwinds coming to Canada. I mean, who knows what the economy is going to look like in 3 to 6 months, but I think that
there's headwinds too, right? There's headwinds of the economy and broadly a little less consumption of alcohol, right? These two things kind of.
And so all of that, so while there may be a bit of trending downward to trade down, I think that overall the trend is that people really want true, authentic, and really tasty experiences in the wine world. So, I think that you have kind of ripples in where things are economically. Economies improve and have downturns all the time. But if what you're making is true to who you are and what you're doing, then I think that there should always and will be a future for that.
Well, Dan, it's been such a great discussion about winemaking, and what it takes to win and what it takes to survive and thrive in 2025. There, I made a rhyme. I didn't mean to do that.
There you go.
Anyway, listen, thanks for sitting down with the Food Professor podcast. It's a real treat to meet you in person, and congratulations on your success and the product. I'll be there in the summer, so I'll be stocking up myself as I always do. So thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Michael. Great to be with you.
All right, we're back. A couple of last issues. Speaking of first ever soda, now this connects back to what we were talking about last episode about the soda tax in Newfoundland. Soda, for the first time, is banned in a U.S. state as part of, not banned, but it's part of, it's no longer eligible for purchasing sugary drinks using food stamps. And now there's been an unusual, this article talking with CNN. Yeah. They said, listen, it's been an unusual coalition that said, listen, corporate interests in anti-poverty groups, let colas be available to the people. But now we're seeing maybe this influence of RFK Jr., where a U.S. state is saying, I'm going to exempt it because it's better for the people. So they're not taxing it, but what do you think about that they're making a choice for these people?
I mean, SNAP is a problem. I mean, it's half of the farm bill. It's a massive, massive budget. And 70% of people who are recipient of SNAP are either overweight or obese. I mean, nutritionally, it's a failure. You may say, well, we'll actually keep people food secure. Sure, but they're certainly not healthy, and that's a problem. So I'm not surprised to see some states saying, you know what, there are limitations to this approach, and we're going to start managing, some of the issues to actually make our population more nutrition secure, much more so. And so I do expect more states to actually look into SNAP much more critically, because it's actually coming up. I mean, the farm bill is a massive 1.5 or 1.6 trillion dollars.
Yeah, it's massive.
It's bigger than the Canadian budget. And so there's a lot of money.
It's bigger than the U.S. military budget, by the way.
That's right. And so it's a big deal. And I do think from a nutritional perspective, SNAP has been a huge failure. Absolutely.
Well, from nutritional failures to fun successes for the brand Oreo. That's kind of a weird transition, but I'm going to make it anyway. We both got kids, so Selena Gomez, no stranger to our households, and no stranger to collaborations. Man, did you know that she's one of the youngest? She's 32, one of the youngest self-made billionaires. She's worth $1.3 billion.
Wow!
And part of that's connected to Rare Beauty and the collab she does, not just her music and creativity. What a creative individual. And successful. And now Oreos has collabed with her to make a brand new Oreo-flavored cookie based on horchata. Do you know horchata? A sweetened drink made from ground rice or
I didn't know that. Wow.
Flavored with cinnamon. I mean, she's got some eating stuff and some health stuff that she watches her health very closely. So she's making a horchata Oreo. 20 million Instagram followers. Wow. So what a great collab. Congratulations to
that's great.
Oreo for thinking laterally or thinking all kinds of different ways. And apparently it's going to be available in Canada.
I don't know many actresses or musicians that actually do well in the food industry. I don't know about you, but I can't think of many.
Well, maybe let's see if I wonder how the Breakfast with Ryan is going for Tim Hortons. There's one guy.
Oh, I got to tell you, I went to so we're actually having constructive people redo the bathroom of my son's place, and they were working on Monday, holiday Monday. So I went to Tim Hortons to buy some donuts. I got to tell you, there was a lineup. Everyone was buying the box.
Everyone that's great.
Was buying Ryan's breakfast. I couldn't believe it.
Wow, did you try it?
No, I just bought 6 donuts for the guys. Yeah.
All right.
So I was tempted, though. I was tempted.
Right.
Oh yeah.
All right. So before you go to Texas, you got to try Ryan's breakfast. I'll do the same. How about that?
Absolutely. It'll be a road trip goodie, a road trip snack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, great episode. Safe travels. You're in Vancouver. When are you heading back? You're back home by the end of the week.
Heading back tomorrow. Yeah. Got some meetings on Friday.
All right. Fantastic. Well, that's the show for this week. I'm Michael LeBlanc, consumer advisor. and media baron in making, I guess. And you are?
I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Safe travels, everybody.
Take care.